Monday, 21 November in the year of our Lord 2022. We got a lot to get to and a lot of things we're trying to stop at this illegitimate regime. I want to start with Reggie Littlejohn. Reggie, you had the amazing webinar today on the Committee on Present Danger of China. Walk us through what is the, you're having a call to action. Tell us what is going on, ma'am.
Well, the webinar, which is called Efficiency or Enslavement, has to do with the fact that we are about to enter a digital gulag. The trap is about to spring because two things have come together. Last week, the G20 has said that they want to institute a global vaccine passport, which can be used as the platform for China's social credit system. And the Biden White House published their declaration on its website. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, Biden promulgated Executive Order 14067 about the implementation of a central bank digital currency, which is very, very dangerous. This is the opposite of cryptocurrency. It's the opposite of Bitcoin. Instead, it's centralized, and what it will mean is that the central government will be able to control, program our money. So it's like going back to your childhood where your parent can say, here's your allowance. You can only spend, don't buy candy. And, oh, I'm cutting off your allowance this week because you're a bad boy or a bad girl. The U.S. government will be in that situation, except that the consequences will be so much more dire. They will be able to cut us off from our credit cards, cut us off from our bank accounts if we don't go along with the official narrative. And by the way, the G20, when they were calling for these vaccine passports, talked about the need for managing or clamping down on disinformation. And I would say that probably most of everything that happens on your war room and most of the things that happen on the Committee on the Present Danger of China and most of the things that Dr. McCullough says and all of these heroic figures who are standing up to the official narrative would be characterized as disinformation. And who knows what will happen to us.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. I mean, the Hunter Biden laptop is a perfect example. This was Russian disinformation. I'm going to talk to Koffler in a second. This was the 41 intelligence officers came out and said Russian disinformation, and Biden looked the American people in the eye and lied about it. That's right. And we know CBS, the great Catherine Herridge. Oh, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, CBS. Oh, thank you so much. You've now approved it. 2 years later, and of course, 2 weeks past the midterm elections. Just, that was random, obviously. I want to go back to the declaration because, and I'm going to get Brat on here in a second as a congressman, talk about the budgeting appropriations for all this. We got Rebekah Koffler, we got Joe Allen, I got Mike Davis, I got Jayne Zirkle. Boom, from Brazil to the halls of Congress. We're going to cover it all in this hour. This declaration, who gave the authority where did they get the authority to actually buy into this G20? I haven't seen any legislation. These executive orders, the one on transhumanism, the one on digital currency, it's just like the student debt. He's signing stuff over there. And of course, later the courts outrule it. But where does he actually have the authority? I thought Congress somehow to be involved in this, Reggie Littlejohn.
Steve, the issue just brought up is so important. They don't have the authority, okay? So the G20 is just the 20 people, the 20 countries that have the biggest economies in the world. They don't have any official authority. The authority that they have is the authority that we give them. So Biden posted their declaration on the White House website, and he agrees with them. Okay. And in my opinion, these guys are all globalists. So the problem is that in our legal systems developed under the nation state model. And then these self-proclaimed people like the G20 and the B20, which is the 20 biggest business leaders, and the World Economic Forum and the United Nations are these supernatural or supranational entities that have self-proclaimed authority, and they don't have any real authority except what we give them. And by giving them authority through all these executive orders, Biden is basically subverting the legislative process so that these horrible policies will never come to a vote. And that's why we have to stop it. Okay, so we have this launched this campaign today. It's an Align Act campaign. People should go to stopvaxpassports.org and sign our Align Act campaign saying, number one, to the Biden administration, we don't want a central bank digital currency. And to Congress, wake up. The executive branch is taking away your authority to rule over money.
Reggie, how do people, once again, I want to get this guys up in all the chat rooms, and Grace Chung and Captain Bannon, Jayne, Nicole, everybody. I want to push it out to all of our different platforms and over to the Midnight Rider and everybody. Where do people go right now, Reggie?
Go to stopvaxpassports.org and you will be able to sign this campaign. Please, we need to stop this immediately, because once the central bank digital currency and the vaccine passport come together, there will be no more dissent. Okay, so that's number one. And then number two,
this is total control. Yep.
Total control. This is the thing, Steve. Once they have the central bank digital currency, which is programmable, and they decide what the narrative is, and that people who are counter narrative, like you and me, and a lot of the people who are watching this, they can just shut us off from our bank accounts. They can just shut us off from our credit cards. I mean, what happened in Canada with the Canadian truckers and those who supported them, that's what happened to them. That's got to be a wake-up call to the whole world, and we have to stop it before it gets implemented.
Reggie, how do people get to the Committee on the Present Danger? How do they follow you on social media?
Okay, so to follow me on social media, it's I'm on Getter. I'm still not restored to Twitter. So at real Reggie Littlejohn on Getter. And then in a couple days, you will be able to see this video or this webinar on the CPDC China, Committee on the Present Danger China. It's CPDC China website, and also on stopvaxpassports.org.
Thank you, ma'am. Honored to have you on here.
Thank you.
Brat,
Thank you so much.
this brings up a point. You're a congressman, Brat. Is she right? Are we just ceding our sovereignty to Biden on these executive orders? And the combination of this, where the vax in itself is dangerous, the central digital currency is dangerous. You combine those two, basically the citizens of this country have given up what the revolutionary generation fought for. Does the executive branch, as your reading of the Constitution, have the right to do that, sir?
No, absolutely not. And we have a lot of good Congress folks putting in bills on the Federal Reserve in general, but I have not heard of the fight on this one yet. And it is, of course, huge, right? The digitalization has to do with the tracking reminiscent of the CCP and ESG and all this kind of thing coming from on high. And they're very clever. They go step by step by step. And so I think it's one of the top economic issues of our time, and it's all contingent on House leadership, who I've got no faith in right now after what they did in the past election cycle.
Okay, but I want to go to the House leadership fighting. We'll have you back on to talk about that because you know the inside. But the two things the House is going to have, you have the anvil of the appropriations process, the budget, right, the money, and only the House can divvy it up. And you have the hammer of the investigations. Walk me through the anvil part of it. Walk me through the appropriations part, particularly the budget. And do you think people up there are getting focused on what we need to do to set this ship right?
Not yet. They're starting. There's inklings. And so I'll start on this cycle right now, the lame duck going up to this January. A couple data points from Matt Dickerson at Heritage Foundation. There's no example after the House flips of voting for an omnibus, right? So that context should give us huge leverage and power over our own leadership. This has never happened. Every House has always let the voters decide at the beginning of the new year, right? So in the lame duck, there's no example after the House flips of voting for an omnibus budget, which is the 12 bills, which they need to get the U.S. senators to go along with. And then second point, even Boehner in these circumstances got basically a clean CR with just a defense boost, and then against Obama, right? Because he was willing to fight. And when the House fights, we can actually win. It's unheard of. And then after that, he got 2 CRs in a row with a 1% decrease. And so that's great. So that those two pieces both show that if the House will stand up and fight, we can have leverage, and we always have had it in the past. And they shouldn't be ducking
I want to make sure people understand. I want to make sure people understand, because this is where this audience comes to play. The debt ceiling looks like it may be off the table. The raising the debt ceiling, so the debt ceiling's off the table. You have this huge omnibus bill. They had by the way, the amnesty for the 11 million are off the table. It looks like, because they couldn't get the Republican votes. They got this omnibus, and the omnibus is going to be $1 trillion to $2 trillion, not funded. The Federal Reserve is going to print the money. We got to somehow stop the omnibus and the Defense Authorization Act, which got all the wokeness, and push that into the new Congress. Right. Dave, Brat, you've been up there for these tough knife fights. How is that going to happen? How are we going to shove the two? Because they all want to pay off for their buddies and their sponsors and their lobbyists, and the guys are going to hire them later. How do we do this last thing, the Sisyphus move to get the rock back up the hill?
It's huge. And the budget numbers you just mentioned, I mean, we're getting used to $6 trillion budgets going forward, right? So this is unheard of. It used to be 4, which was an insult to our intelligence back in the day. Now they're looking at 6 or 7s going forward because they don't care about our solvency. So, of course, you know the answer. Everything rests on the grassroots. Luckily, we have 20 senators up for election next time, somewhere in this ballpark. And so they do not, senators, if they have one bad vote, it's risky business for them. In the House, you got tons of votes, and there's a lot more in play. But if senators have one bad vote that a competitor can use to run against them, they don't want it. So this is a big deal. We've had 12 senators in the past misbehaving terrible, selling the country down the river. But coming up, there's a lot of Senate races. And if the grassroots calls their senators and puts heat on them and the House and on the House leadership vote, there's a chance. And then I got another bomb to drop going forward after January, if you got a minute.
Sure, go ahead. We love bombs.
Yeah. One of my good friends, one of the best congressmen out there, especially on financial issues, Thomas Massey from Kentucky, has a great idea, knowing that the political cycle has already started on the omnibus for next year, which will be October of 23. Right, they're already starting a cycle of mainstream messaging. The Republicans are obstructionists. They're shutting down the government, the full faith and credit's at stake, all this kind of nonsense, while we're bankrupting our country and putting it all on the kids, by the way, which no one ever brings up. So in order to counteract that omnibus argument, all you do is right now, this coming January 4, you have a vote on a CR that funds 95% of the government. Right? So you have that vote this January 4, and for the next months or whatever, you can say, hey, we voted 95% of the budget. We're only clipping 5%, and let's see the reaction.
I love that. You hit that. We only got a couple minutes, but this is Massey's from MIT. He's like a physicist from MIT or something. He's super libertarian. A big brain. Walk me through, because that's genius. You're saying just give him a cross the board 5% cut, which they'll freak out. Walk me through how he does that. I love it. How does he do that?
You just we put forward. We'll be in the House majority, so you put forward a 95% funding of the government, so there can be no question about our goodwill toward funding the government. Right, a 5% cut instead of the usual, $7 trillion budgets. And all of this, of course, is about messaging. And, of course, the left owns the mainstream media. Everyone in Congress, my friends back home, you say, Dave, say this. And I'm like, to who? Right? That's the whole problem. So you know who owns the ink. So you got to counteract that. The people who own the ink don't care a whit about the American people or the budget or the deficits going to the kids. So you pass a CR that funds 95% of the budget right up front. And for the next 9 months, hopefully we get an omnibus, right? You go through 12 appropriations bills and the 12 committees. That's the way it works. We've passed 3 of those in the past 47 years, so you can bet the Vegas odds on that one. Pretty low chance of getting through that following history, and it's getting even worse, so I have less faith in that process, right? 3 omnibus bills passed, 12 votes in 47 years. So
the reason I love it is then they couldn't say you weren't prepared to fund the government. We were prepared to fund the government. You just got to make some reasonable cuts, and you can't. You're not going. Everybody's not going to be kicked into the street starving. It's 95% of the budget. Dave, can I ask you? Hang on a second. I know you got bounced, so I want to hear Rebekah Koffler. The other big thing, I'm bringing Rebekah, who's probably, I think, the best expert of being inside the minds of the guys in the Kremlin and the KGB and the FSB, all these bad hombres that run this place. The other big thing, Rebekah, let me bring you in now. The other big thing in the lame duck is this $37 billion commitment for Ukraine, but it's bigger than that. It's really about America's continual engagement of just funding the Ukrainian government and now the military and MTG. And by the way, I think MTG has been put back on Twitter, and at 7 o'clock, I think she's going to start live tweeting her stream of consciousness thoughts. So be prepared for that. But she says she wants a complete audit, a total audit of everything Ukraine. You've got a brilliant piece that came up on Fox today. Say, hey, look, I kind of warned you guys about it, but China is the big winner in this thing. Walk us through where we actually stand. China, the CCP is the winner in the Ukraine situation, and particularly the United States, the people in Europe are saying, hey, we can't do this anymore. The unlimited wants and needs of Ukraine for just cash money, both to run the country and to fund this looks like never-ending conflict on the eastern border, the eastern Russian-speaking border of Ukraine. Rebekah Koffler.
Yes, so we have been depleting our own treasury, Steve, but that we have already provided in the 9 months more than we provided in Afghanistan in 5 years. But that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is this. General Milley, the same General Milley who was saying that he's going to warn China's Xi if the U.S. were to plan a military operation against them. He on Wednesday admitted what we have been warning about on the show all along, and that is that there's absolutely no military path to victory for Ukraine. So all of this money, $24 billion that has been already spent, and many more, about 70 billion committed, has down the drain for nothing. But even the biggest problem is that we are depleting our own weapons stockpile to dangerous levels. And if you listen to China's Xi, he has been ratcheting up his rhetoric about the One China policy. And during the recent visit to the Armed Forces Operational Command Center, he directed his military to be ready for war. And so we are sitting here with our very, very sophisticated weaponry being pumped up into Ukraine. We have already provided 20 HIMARS, the high mobility artillery rocket systems, with 18 on the way. And President Biden himself is concerned now about inability of our military industrial complex to have enough production capacity to backfill our weapons supply. So this is reckless policy by the Biden administration. We are right now at risk of war. Potentially, Russia and China could challenge us in a two-theater war. And we are not ready for that because the Pentagon is prioritizing pronouns instead of our own combat readiness, Steve.
Rebekah, let me ask you about Zelensky. And the other day, at first, he looks like because as soon as the Republicans win, he knows the money's going to be cut off, or it's going to be an audit. It's going to be very tough to get. And all of a sudden, he's ready to negotiate. Then this guy comes out and says, we can't negotiate, so that's capitulation. The way to bring this to a conclusion is somehow to get Zelensky and the Russians in a negotiating room and negotiate an actual settlement to this, or it's just going to go on and on and on, and more Ukrainians are going to get killed. Because, you know, the Russians, hey, they didn't give up in Stalingrad and they didn't give up in Leningrad. They ain't going to give up in Ukraine, okay? They've had their backs to the wall on many occasions, and they just don't quit. So how does this play out? Because right now, I can tell you from House members, and I'll bring Brat in a second, the right wing of the Republican Party is saying, actually, no more money. This is absurd because it's a bottomless pit. To run the country is going to cost $100 to $150 billion a year. To rebuild the country is almost $1 trillion, and that doesn't include the military part of it. So, what do you believe is going to take to get to Zelensky to actually, in good faith, get to the negotiating table and try to bring this fiasco to an end?
Well, it's theoretically very easy to get Zelensky to the table, Steve, because we are financing this experimental project. And so he should not be dictating the terms of discourse to us. The Biden administration must dictate our terms of discourse to him. Because, but the situation is right now this. My analysis up until recently was that Putin was willing to negotiate if Zelensky were to let him keep Crimea and the 4 territories that he recently annexed. Well, my analysis has changed, Steve. I believe Putin thinks that he is winning the war and he's going to keep going. Here's why I believe that.
Wow.
Despite the fact that all the,
I tell you what, hang on, Rebekah, hang on 1 second. I don't want to lose Dave Brat. I wanted to ask him this question. He's got to bounce. You hang right there. Brat,
got it.
Given what Rebekah's talking about, and Putin thinks he's winning the war, your sense of the Tom Masseys, the Gateses, the MTGs, how dug in is the American Republican right on this no more money to Ukraine? This thing is out of control. Dave Brat.
Yeah, with the slim majority in the House, they're plenty dug in. I can't imagine folks going home and telling their folks this $90 billion and then $1 trillion and then $150 billion for maintenance and whatever. I mean, good luck with that one. It's you had it right, the right call from the beginning. Should have been at the negotiating table right off the start. The NATO piece, the Euro piece, the globalist piece, just a disaster. And I don't think a lot of people want anywhere near it. So the burden goes to us, and I think we shoulder this one pretty handily.
Brat, you're going to be all over this lame duck because lame duck could be historic unless we shut it down. Brat, how do people get to you on social media?
Yep, Brat Economics at Getter. Brat, B-R-A-T, Brat Economics at Getter, and 3rd floor, Liberty University School of Business. Bring your young scholars up there along with the parents. Love to meet you all. God bless. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, brother. Rebekah, you just dropped a bombshell because every New York Times, I picked my New York Times up, I got my Wall Street Journal. Putin's losing. It's going to be a coup against Putin. Putin's losing. Oh, by the way, they're pulling out of another town. Putin's losing. The Ukrainians are winning. And this is why everybody's saying you got to back the Ukrainians, although it's not about who wins or loses. Give me your analysis. Why do you say Putin is actually winning? And more importantly, he thinks he's winning.
So this is wishful thinking, what you just told me, all the mass media, and I am tired of hearing all these generals to get on TV and they proclaim that Ukraine is winning. It's the same people who kept telling us during 20 years in Afghanistan that victory was just around the corner. And right now it's the same lunatics with towels on their heads, the Taliban, that are ruling that country and are benefiting from billions of dollars of highly sophisticated, top secret U.S. weaponry. So here's why Putin believes he's winning. Despite the fact that he strategically withdrew from Kherson, look what he did in the rest of Ukraine. 40% of Ukraine critical infrastructure is crippled. And what that means, Steve, is that there's no heat, there's no electricity, and there's no water, with the temperatures having dropped in Kiev and across Ukraine to freezing levels. When there's no water, there's no sewage. You can't flush your toilet. There's going to be disease just in a few weeks. And so Putin is not, he's not a boxer. He's not Muhammad Ali. So, which is what, the U.S. strategists anticipating him to be. No, he is not going to deliver a crippling blow, a knockout to Ukraine. But what he's going to do, he's a judo master, right? Mixed martial arts. Probably some of your viewers watch MMA, right? UFC. He's going to do a rear naked choke by choking Ukrainians out of all of these vital ability to survive, no water, no electricity. And so this is why he thinks he's winning, because his victory is very different. It's not territorial gain. He has already gained 20% of Ukraine, like we said, annexed 4 of them plus Crimea. but it's much more importantly, he basically deprived it of its ability to produce any kind of heavy industry. He has decimated, absolutely decimated its production capacity and its ability to produce its and export its agricultural products. So Ukraine as a country right now, it's on the path to become a failed state, and that is Putin's goal.
And this is what this is going to be. This is why they need so much cash. They're going to need 150 billion a year to maintain it. They're going to look for the nations of Europe and the United States. Put it in. Rebekah, we got to bounce. I need people to go read this Fox. How do they get your book? How do they get the article on Fox? How do they get to you?
The book is available anywhere on Amazon, at Barnes and Nobles. Just Google the book, Putin's Playbook. Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. My Twitter, Getter, and Truth Social accounts is at Rebekah0132. I have a website. I regularly post my unclassified intelligence analysis on the Fox News website, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, and other regular publications.
She's got a brilliant piece right now up in Fox. We're going to put it up on our Getter account and on War Room. Rebekah Koffler, Putin's winning, and somebody's got to bring this to a conclusion. Is this going to be a bitter, dark winter for the Ukrainian people? Rebekah Koffler, thank you very much. Honored to have you in the War Room. From the battlefield of Ukraine to the battlefield of democracy in Brazil, next in the War Room.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. I'm going to change up the order just a bit. I've got Jayne Zirkle and these massive, the biggest story in the world, with all the big stories going on in the big, the news that you need to know, the signal, not the noise. The biggest and most important is actually happening in Brazil. And if you rank order, all these massive things are going on. I'm going to get to Jayne in a second. And we're going to have Brazil pieces every day in both the morning and afternoon shows going forward. I want to bring in Joe Allen, though. Joe, we had the big webinar of Frank Gaffney and Brian Kennedy, the great team of the Committee on Present Danger, which has done so much and will be a big part of the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, so much of what's going on in the House on oversight. They had the webinar today, and one of the call to arms here is this shocking occurrence of what happened at the G20, really brought to light by yourself, which was, hey, they put this proclamation up. They're talking about this digital digital vaccine passport, but it's even much deeper than that. But hey, if you combine that with what they said in their executive order months ago, and you look at the experiment of the 12 working with the Federal Reserve, you combine the digital currency with the digital passport, you essentially have total and complete control of a citizen of the nation. This is actually gets to the social credit score of the Chinese Communist Party. And isn't it interesting how many things come back to the CCP? Isn't that interesting? Joe Allen, you're now engaged with the Committee on Present Danger. You're actually giving one of the seminars tomorrow. But I just want to talk to that first piece. And you brought this up with saying, hey, the Biden administration is having these executive orders, and they're not really given the fanfare that these things, giving how humongous they are. And in addition, they're spinning each one differently. Like the digital currency was kind of like some sort of experimentation, and we're trying to help manage digital assets, and this is for the good of the country. The transhumanist was complete lie. This is the moonshot for cancer. This is about this is about curing cancer, and it's the moonshot. Joe Biden, I'm big in moonshots, right? We're trying to throw the ball downfield, and that's what this is. And it's not. These are whole of government. And when you see the apparatus of the United States government, the power of the administrative state, you see the power in getting back of a digital currency, and then getting in back of these vaccine passports, and getting in back of transhumanism in a whole of government approach. Katie, bar the door. Joe Allen.
Yeah, Steve, I think the interconnection of all these can be hard to organize in the mind, but it's very, very clear. All of it falls under the paradigm of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the language of the G20 Bali Leaders Declaration certainly echoes again and again the language of the fourth industrial revolution. So does Joe Biden's biotechnology and biomanufacturing initiative, and the central bank digital currencies that are being piloted right now. That also falls under that paradigm. And what it is an idea of total digitalization. And when you look at certain developments that happen just on the heels of the biotechnology initiative, for instance, so that you have now a lot of news about CRISPR experiments that will cure cancer. You have a lot of ambitious ideas as to how human beings can be enhanced. And then you have the kind of disgusting sci-fi element, like the FDA approving synthetic meat for human consumption. So that's just lab-grown meat that would be basically developed in vats and sold in grocery stores. All of that is reflected in this idea of the digitization of all spheres of life, and all of that is reflected in the G20 declaration. And of course, Reggie Littlejohn has been a huge asset in raising the alarm on global digital vaccine passports. The Indonesian health minister was talking about how Indonesia is prepared to implement these. And of course, the declaration itself talks about how all nations should cooperate or collude in order to create digital proof of vaccination so that people can move across borders. And as you just said, all of this adds up. Should these visions be realized, all of this adds up to the ability for governments in partnership with businesses to control every aspect of your life, what you can buy, where you can go, what you can say, what you can think.
By the way, this is not this can happen by these executive orders. This can happen essentially in the here and now. The technology is available. It's got to be perfected. It's got to be integrated. But this is people understand this is a program. It's the reason Reggie Littlejohn are putting these seminars together. This is happening. If you look at the G20, this is what they're spending time on. They got this new thing called the B20, which is kind of the side deal. That's the business element of it. And right, these are kind of operating apparatuses. COP27 is this thing that used to be Glasgow and all this. That's this annual coming together for the climate change. They just agreed to a framework of reparations, ladies and gentlemen. There's going to be trillions of dollars transferred from the industrial West to third world dictators. So don't think this is not happening. This is happening every day. Now they're in kind of the coordination and execution phase of it. Am I incorrect in any of that, Joe Allen?
No. And, I think that one of the more disturbing elements, we played the video of the excerpt of Klaus Schwab's speech at the B20. And as silly and innocent as it may sound, his big fish analogy in that governments and businesses must partner together and become fast fish, as opposed to big fish. They need to keep up with the technological developments in order to survive. And that came as a warning. Some might say it's a threat,
yes.
But it's a serious issue because we have to figure out what the alternatives are going to be if we're going to reject these technological innovations. Because he's right in a sense. If you are going to survive, you either have to keep up or you have to figure out how you're going to survive outside that system. And I think a lot of people are working on parallel economies and various parallel societies in an attempt to do that. I'm very hopeful in that regard, but I'm fairly pessimistic in regard to stopping the development of these technologies and their implementation around the world.
Well, that's why you're in the war. Senator Mark Warner from the Commonwealth of Virginia warned about TikTok the other day. They said, hey, this is absolutely a CCP apparatus for sucking data out of the American people, particularly teenagers. It shouldn't be lost on anybody that this was the Biden administration's biggest platform for 2022. This is why they had all these bizarre influence in there. They use TikTok. You tomorrow are going to give the webinar on TikTok, are you not, sir?
Yeah, I'll be very happy to be at the Present Danger China webinar. I'll be talking about TikTok. I'll be talking about also its relationship to the various other platforms that are American-born that do much the same thing. But I think the real and most immediate problem is that TikTok really has gripped the mind of the youth, and it is a way of extracting data, and it is a way of influencing the mentality and the behaviors of young people in America.
Hey, Joe, I know you've got a piece on the long-termism on SBF. I got to get to that tomorrow, but I want people to read the piece and get to all the access to your pieces. Where do they go with this? Because you've kind of really are able to frame this FTX situation that I think is the way that people need to look at it. Give me a 1-minute précis on it, and then where people go to get the piece.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, so I'll just give you two terms: effective altruism and long-termism, both of which overlap and in some sense stem from the philosophy of transhumanism, and both of which were the underpinning or the sort of smokescreen used by Sam Bankman-Fried in his FTX scam. So yeah, we'll be back about that, but I think those are two terms you want to look out for. You could say in many ways, long-termism is the new transhumanism. You can find me at JOEBOTXYZ on social media, also joebot.xyz and warroom.org under the transhumanism tab.
If you're confused about the SBF story, if you're confused about FTX, I think we've got a framing device that'll let you to really kind of think through. We'll do that tomorrow. Joe Allen, thank you. Good luck on the seminar tomorrow, also on TikTok. And thank you so much for connecting the dots here now that we got the Committee on the Present Danger all over it. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Steve.
I've got Mike Davis I'm going to get to in a second, but I got to go. Jayne Zirkle's done amazing reporting on this. I gave this talk in Mexico City the other day about to the CPAC Mexico to this audience. And I got to tell you, it was centered around Brazil and what's happened in Brazil. The biggest story in the world are the tens of millions of people that have taken to the streets of Brazil to fight for their democracy. It's not being covered by the Brazilian media. It's not being covered by the world media. This is a world historical event. The Brazilian Spring is upon us, and this is beyond the Bolsonaros. They're not really doing much to be engaged here, but people refuse to back down. And there have been some horrific scenes. If we can bring in Jayne Zirkle, and Jayne, tell the before we play some of the footage, tell the audience what the radical courts with Lula, the transnational communist tool of the CCP. What are they doing to parents down there that are protesting to defend their constitution and the right to have their vote really count, ma'am?
So the National Council of Justice in Brazil has issued an order invoking the Guardianship Council, which is Brazilian CPS, essentially Child Protective Services, to target the children and families engaging in these election protests. They are to verify the condition of children and protect the children by any means necessary, including potentially separating the children from their parents, which is what we've seen across Brazil in these absolutely heart-wrenching viral videos that have surfaced on Twitter. Now, the justice behind this order is Alexandre de Moraes, and he is a far left-wing Supreme Court justice who has been behind much of the censorship and the debanking of individuals and companies in Brazil who have been aiding and supporting these protesters. And it really has been a classic case of we're from the government and we're here to help, which this audience is well versed in what that really means. And not only has the Supreme Court been a part of this, but also the Justice Inspector, Luis Felipe Salermo, who signed off on this order. Now, the Justice Inspector's job is to ensure that there is not government overreach or abuse going on, but Mr. Salermo has a left-wing history voting in support of this censorship, and he was appointed by then President Lula in 2008. And what's really, really sad here is that Brazil has a bad human trafficking and child prostitution problem that this Guardianship Council could really be doing a lot of good to solve, but instead it's being used as a political tool to intimidate.
Hang on. Jayne, I just want to make sure people understand this, because it's a blockbuster story. If you're showing up at these protests and you're protesting, hey, they stole my vote, the machine stole it, they need to do a recount, they need to do a revote, we need to have another election. If you're out there in any way protesting, they're actually sending the Child Protective Services to take your child away because they say that you're not being a good parent or the child needs to be protected from your madness and craziness and anti-government, anti-Brazil? Is that in a nutshell? They're actually taking the children away from the parents because the parents are protesting a stolen election.
Yes, so that's exactly the incident that occurred on November 18th that was captured on camera. And when the Guardianship Council moved to do this, they were met with incredible resistance from the Brazilian election protesters. The Brazilian election protesters surrounded the council members and essentially said, we're not allowing you to take these children, and chased them out of town. So they're not taking this. They are still marching and protesting. And in response to this, parents and their children marched in the streets hand in hand, showing immense bravery.
Jayne, we got to bounce, but you've been covering this since you met these people in Times Square. It's just overwhelming. Just tell the audience the scale of the size, because it's not being covered in Brazilian media, and the world media is total crickets about it. What is the scale of these protests?
Right, so it's because of the Supreme Court justices like Alexandre de Moraes, and why it's not being covered in the Brazilian media, because of the censorship. The scale of these protests are absolutely massive. I mean, it is tens of thousands across the U.S. and then tens of millions in Brazil. It is really a geopolitical phenomenon that is stretched across the entire globe.
Jayne, you're covering this nonstop. How do people get to your social media? You're doing live chats, you're doing live streams, you're putting up great stories. You got this blockbuster story on War Room right now. How do people track you on all this?
Well, definitely go check out the interview I did with Kelly de Oliveira, a Brazilian activist. You can find that interview on War Room's Getter, and you can find me on Getter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Jayne Zirkle.
Our own Jayne Zirkle is the cutting edge of this. This Brazilian story is the single most important story of everything going on. This is the biggest world historical event that's happening right now, the Brazilian Spring. Jayne Zirkle, thank you for covering this, and thank you for being on here.
Thank you.
I've asked Mike Davis to join us and to step away from other stuff he's working on. Mike, here's the reason. There's a bunch of stuff exploding this afternoon, and the audience needs Mike Davis to explain this. These special counsels, and you don't have a lot of these special counsels or special prizes. It's very rare. But they've had a history of being kind of like Caesar's wife. You got to be, because they're worried about the politicization of the Justice Department. This is supposed to be a bit like Caesar's wife, beyond any question of being chaste. You've seen all this exploding. We had Boris on the earlier show. What is going on with the conflicts of interest with this special prosecutor? You've already said he's a political left-wing hack, but now it looks like the wife is the queen of the Trump haters, sir.
Yeah, it's very bad. The special counsel is supposed to be independent and at a minimum have the appearance that they're not political, that they're going to be neutral, that they're going to be fair. That's the whole point of an attorney general handing this off to a special counsel, to alleviate any appearance of conflict of interest. And with this Jack Smith, it just keeps getting worse the more we learn about him. Not only have we learned that Eric Holder hired Jack Smith to run the public integrity section in the Justice Department in 2010, and then Jack Smith pursued Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a potential Republican presidential candidate, with a bogus corruption theory that got overturned by the Supreme Court 8-0. It would have been 9-0 if Justice Scalia didn't pass away. We're also learning that this special prosecutor's wife was a donor to President Biden in 2020 and helped produce a film, a pro-Obama film. So it just stinks. The politics here stink badly. And remember, these same Democrats are going after a Supreme Court justice like Justice Clarence Thomas based upon his wife's personal political views, Jenny's personal political views. They're calling for Justice Thomas's recusal on Supreme Court cases based upon his wife's political views. Why wouldn't this same standard also apply to Jack Smith? It's actually a higher standard for the Department of Justice.
Not only she donated the Clinton campaign, her Twitter feed, which she took down, but of course the people had it in the Wayback Machine. It's virulently I mean, it is like Trump hate, 10,000. Tell me how this gets. Does the House just say we've had enough of this nonsense and you're going to get no money whatsoever, and we don't care if you want to shut down the government over it? Tell me how we how do you develop this? Because it just can't let the stand. The guy's a hater. Remember, 2010, Holder hired him in 2010 after the Tea Party revolt. He immediately was part of the learner getting on top of the Tea Party for the IRS situation. This guy's dirty as you get, politicized. But now with the wife being such a hardcore anti-Trump partisan, tell me the denouement. How does it? We got 2 minutes. Walk me through the Mike Davis. How does this thing get resolved?
Well, I mean, it's an illegitimate investigation. They are investigating. I apologize. This is an illegitimate investigation. This guy is a heat-sinking missile sent by Merrick Garland to take out a presidential candidate, Donald Trump, just like Eric Holder used him to take out a presidential candidate with Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. These are illegitimate. This is an illegitimate investigation. This guy has at least an appearance of bias, and he's investigating non-crimes. It is not a crime for presidents to take personal records when he leaves office. That is contemplated by the Presidential Records Act. It is not a crime to object to presidential elections. Democrats did it in 1969, 2001, 2005, and 2017. They are investigating non-crimes here. They're trying to put a dark cloud over President Trump after he announced he's running for president again so they can influence the next presidential election. They're trying to hurt President Trump to help their boss, Joe Biden. This is illegitimate. House Republicans should defund this thing.
Mike, how do people get to you? Go to your site. You're fighting this great crusade against big tech, which is now going to be a monster issue in the new Congress. I want people to get totally up to speed on it and to get your thoughts about all the things related to the Justice Department. Where do they go?
So article3project.org, article number 3project.org, and the big tech fight is on there. If you click on War Room, we set up a website for the War Room posse at Article 3 Project on Getter Twitter Truth, at article number 3 Project. And my personal is MRD DMIA. My initials, Des Moines, Iowa, on Getter Twitter Truth. And thank you, Steve.
As good as his Getter feed is, you're not living your best life unless you're following Mike Davis on Twitter. It's a totally unique experience. Mike Davis, thank you very much for joining us here, brother. I want everybody to follow you on Twitter. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Thanksgiving week, but let me tell you, the news is hot and heavy. We got this lame duck. We got Trump's launched the campaign. We've got everything that's happening in DOJ. We got Brazil. We got the Ukraine. We got the CCP. You got reparations. All of it. Plus, you got the convergence of the digital currency and the vaccine. All of it and more. Plus Arizona and Kerry Lake tomorrow morning. And see you back here at 10 o'clock in the morning.